Okay, here I am again, live streaming, and the subject of this evening's live stream will be finishing a work, as I intend to complete final revisions for this musical composition around a center. I've been in the process of revising it, and at this point I feel convinced that it is time to finish the piece. I'm convinced of this fact because my revisions have become sort of questionable, I guess, in whether or not they're actually improving the piece, or if perhaps I'm simply now kind of playing with the piece and reshaping it sort of like aimlessly, as it were. If you become aware of that sensation as you're working on a piece, then I think that's a sign that it's time to tear yourself away from the piece. And frequently the compositions which I become the most proud of later, the compositions where I feel I've sort of accomplished the most, are the compositions that I had to tear myself away from, in the sense that they're the pieces that it seemed like I could have just kept working on them like endlessly, on and on. And those are the pieces where I become sort of the most anxious about getting it right, because I become anxious that my revisions are maybe not making the piece better, that maybe I'm just sort of experimenting with all these different ideas and none of them are really better or worse. These are the pieces where, like, inevitably you end up exploring the most, right? Like your style becomes sort of the least restricted and the most sort of open to reinvention, as it were. This is important to have these pieces, these pieces where you feel like things are getting kind of up in the air and you're not really so sure of yourself anymore, and you feel a little bit like out of your element, as it were. Like you feel almost like overmatched by the material. Like you feel like your material is good enough that you're not even quite sure how to handle it effectively, if that makes sense. And that's a good feeling to have, because it means you're in the right place. I had a teacher tell me something to this effect, but much more concisely. He said, anytime you're working on a piece and you're really not quite sure of what you're doing, that's a good sign. That's the place that you want to live in as much as possible. And I think I really took that to heart. You can write comfortably and create very good work. You can stay in your comfort zone and create work that is meaningful and beautiful and valuable. I don't think there's really anything wrong with that. Maybe some artists stay in their comfort zone for most of their career. Maybe it takes them a while to find the comfort zone, but once they kind of settle into a comfortable style or technique or procedure, or whatever it is that they kind of feel comfortable and safe doing, then they kind of just create music or whatever it is, novels or poems or artwork or whatever. They create from that place for a long time, and they create a lot of good work. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have the artists who are always seeking to kind of reinvent themselves and their style. And you might think, well, isn't that the better kind of artist? Like, isn't that the artist that is like going to be remembered more, or whatever, the risk taker, the rebel, or the person who was like never really settled in one place and they're always seeking new things. And it's not really that simple, because sometimes those artists who are always taking risks and seeking to do new things, sometimes they struggle in other ways as far as the quality of their work is concerned. Just because a piece is new or innovative or a break from the old doesn't necessarily mean it's a good piece. Those things in themselves do not make a piece good. They only make it different. You know, if you think different is automatically good, then I guess you can say it's automatically good. But if you have a piece that really breaks with the norm in some significant way, and yet is not a very successful work, like on its own merits, insofar as you can evaluate those merits, then is that really a good piece, or is it just an innovative one? I mean, I'll use an example from not art, not from the art world, but from I guess maybe an engineering standpoint. I know it's apples and oranges, but just for the sake of metaphor, the most innovative creations of engineers are quickly outdated. They quickly become obsolete by other innovations, right? So, like, you can't necessarily look at the Ford Model T and evaluate it by the standards of a modern car, because in that sense it would be terrible for all kinds of reasons, right? It's not the same as a modern car. So from the standpoint of a modern car, like if you were to ask someone, like, would the Ford Model T be a good first car for someone who lives in Los Angeles in 2025 and needs to commute 50 miles a day? Like, obviously the answer is no, right? It's not a good car in that sense, in that specific context. But when it was built in whatever it was, 1905, it wasn't just a good car, it was more or less the only car. So pretty much by default, it was the best car, like, bar none, no discussion, right? It was the car that you had if you had a car. So it was either the Ford Model T or horse and buggy, right? So, like, the Ford is the winner by default in the category of best car, right? So it's like a totally different historical context, right? I know this analogy breaks down a little bit when you try to transfer it over to music or art, but not entirely, because there are some works which innovate and introduce a new technique, and in which I don't think the piece is very interesting, other than its originator. It's being an originator of a new technique. Like, I'll try to think of an example with harmonic techniques, harmonic procedures. One that comes to mind is bitonality. Like, some composers get a lot of credit for pioneering bitonality and also polytonality. This might be a hot take, but I think a lot of the early bitonal or polytonal works are really not very interesting, other than the fact that they use bitonality. Like, and again, I apologize if this is a hot take, if this offends anyone, but like Darius Milhaud. Like, Milhaud is known to the history books as one of the composers who was daring and innovative in various ways, particularly with regards to bitonality, among other things. And Milhaud's works which use bitonality, to me, are just kind of whatever. Take it or leave it. They really don't do anything for me. Maybe that's just my personal preference. But the thing is, I love other works that use bitonality in what I would consider to be much more interesting and innovative ways. A big one, of course, would be like Rite of Spring, right? Rite of Spring uses all kinds of bitonal and polytonal procedures, and the result is just stunning. Right? Like, when you actually hear it, when you listen to it, it just blows you away in the way that a Milhaud work doesn't. A Milhaud work, you're like, yeah, okay, I get it. I can hear that, one hand is playing in one key and another hand is playing in another key on the piano. Cool. I adore Ravel. I adore Ravel. I can't have my first mention of Ravel on my live stream be a negative thing. But this is pretty much the only negative thing I could think to say about Ravel. I adore his music through and through. I worship his music. There's one thing that Ravel does sometimes that really kind of irks me, and it's his bitonal stuff. His bitonal passages, they crop up here and there. I think he has some in his opera L'Enfant et le Sortilège, because he wants to go for a certain effect. So I think when in L'Enfant et le Sortilège, I'm sorry if I'm butchering the French, but in that opera, there's a duet with the teacup and the coffee pot. I think it is. The teacup and the coffee pot. And the teacup, problematically, is represented by sort of fake Chinese sounding music. Very, very kind of, problematic nowadays. So there's even a word for it, and I'm gonna butcher this word, but I've seen it written out as shinazere, which I think is a word for just like fake Chinese sounding music written by Western composers. So he has the teacup doing that in one key, and then he has the coffee pot doing another style of music in another key. And it's one of those cute haha kind of things. It's very clever actually, and I think the idea is that it makes you go ha ha ha, like that's so clever. Is it beautiful? It's neat. It's neat. That's about what I can say for it. It's neat. Is it beautiful? I don't know. But in the case of, say, Rite of Spring, all those bitonal and polytonal passages, I don't care what the technique is. I don't listen to those passages in Rite of Spring and go, ooh, that's really neat. Stravinsky's using bitonality, or ooh, that's really neat. He's got like 3 different keys and all these like, polyrhythms that, it's a very it's a fractured orchestra and everyone's kind of playing doing their own thing. Like, I'm not thinking about the technique and going, wow, this is really neat. I appreciate it because it's neat. I'm just like enjoying the experience. I'm just like experiencing those things as a pleasurable sensation of music. So coming back to my much more modest ambitions with a piece such as this, I'm not trying to do anything in this piece that I would consider particularly innovative as far as music written in the year 2025. I accept that my style, my musical style, is pretty conservative, pretty like traditional, old-fashioned, whatever. I use a lot of musical materials and I do a lot of things that are very, I don't know if safe is the right word. That might be too harsh, but fairly traditional. Like, I'm not trying to break with established procedures, and I'm not trying to commit myself to any particularly cutting edge or avant-garde like style. I think that's clear enough when a person looks at my music, and I don't think that's a problem. I don't think most people don't like judge you negatively for that. Some people do if it's their thing, right? Like, they judge any music that's not like as cutting edge or as avant-garde as possible. That's a whole thing, whole can of worms. But it seems to me that most musicians and audiences that I've encountered, they generally take a musical composition at face value, like sort of on its own terms. Now, I know that a lot of audiences have strong biases against certain styles of music, and that bothers me quite a lot. And that's a whole nother can of worms. I know there are audiences who will reject music out of hand, or I say audiences, it's obviously individuals in those audiences. But I'm using this word audiences as kind of synecdoche for, group opinions in consensus. So, it does appear that there are audiences that will reject, I don't know, like, say a composer like Schoenberg, because, he's that composer who wrote all that ugly dissonant music. I'm going to hate this piece, right? And they don't even know, like, what they're about to hear. They could be about to hear Verklärte Nacht, which is his pre-tonal music, which is like stunningly gorgeous, late romantic, lush harmony. And it's very conceivable that a person could be sitting in an audience about to hear Verklärte Nacht and already thinking, without knowing anything about the piece, this is going to be ugly and dissonant because it's written by that Schoenberg guy. And I know that Schoenberg guy was the guy who invented all those dissonances, right? So that does happen. But it seems to me that my music doesn't encounter a lot of resistance from audiences, at least, for being, a new piece or a piece written by a contemporary composer. I don't get the sense that someone encountering my music, say in a concert, like in a recital program, which I've done this a lot. I'll program my own compositions in a recital, which is mostly focused around classical repertoire. So when I give a recital, oftentimes my repertoire will include works by, Rachmaninoff, Chopin, Schubert, very standard rep stuff. And then I'll throw in one of my own pieces. And I've often thought, like, I should probably play more contemporary music when I do my own music, because for no other reason than that it helps people have a frame of reference for what my music is, right? It's kind of weird when you think about it. If you play a congregation or a cluster of composers who are of basically roughly one time period, say the late Romantic, and then you just skip 300 years. You skip 150 years or 200 years entirely, and you just plunk the audience down with one of your pieces and expect for them to, like, know what it's about. But I kind of like doing that. I actually think it's to my benefit, because if I play a recital program that is mostly, standard classical rep, and then I have one of my own pieces, in a way I get the sense the audience doesn't really know what to expect of it if they don't know my work already. And maybe they'll probably trust my musical sensibility if I've been playing all this beloved repertoire like Rachmaninoff preludes and Beethoven sonatas and stuff, and then, I play one of my own pieces. I'm guessing they'll think that, well, this guy probably writes in a fairly traditional, romantic or whatever kind of style, which is basically the case with me. All right, so there's a lot of preamble. I'm going to finish this piece, and before I get any further, I wanted to bring up this quote. I have to do two things, actually. I want to bring up this quote and also keep track of what I'm saying on this notepad. This probably seems shockingly unsophisticated for someone who watches other live streams. I'm sure that other live streamers who really know what they're doing, they have some really snazzy way of showing these, like, I don't know, timestamps or title cards or something like that. But I figured I would do something like that for myself, because I want to go back. I'm going to scrub back through this video and add timestamps for people who might be interested in watching the video and jumping around to, different subjects. So I'm going to write basically the topic that I'm talking about here every time I switch to a new topic. And then when I go back and add timestamps, I'll be able to synchronize easily by scrubbing through the video whenever I see this notepad pop up and what the topic is. So let's see if this makes sense in my head. I don't know if it's actually going to make sense in practice, but let's try it. So, discussing, quote, a work of art is never finished. Get my keyboard. Okay. This quote I had to look it up because I was trying to remember who it was attributed to, and I was confused because I remember hearing this quote attributed to Nadia Boulanger. As a composition student, I had heard this quote from at least one teacher. I think I've heard it several times throughout my schooling. where a teacher would say, well, you know what Boulanger said? A work of art is never finished, merely abandoned. If you don't know who Nadia Boulanger is, by the way, in the composition world, she's famous. She's the great pedagogue who taught many of the great 20th century composers, like early 20th century composers. She's extremely famous and extremely influential for this reason. Off the top of my head, the composers that I can remember that studied with Boulanger would be Copland. I think. Okay, see, I'm gonna embarrass myself if these are wrong, but I think Stravinsky studied with her. I think Ravel studied with her. I think Messiaen studied with her. I know there's a bunch. It's a lot of the great composers studied with her at one point. Famously, George Gershwin, tried to study with her and was turned down. There's an anecdote about this. It's a wonderful glimpse into Gershwin's mindset, I guess, his mind. He was always self-conscious about his compositional technique, so it's said. He sort of resented not being taken more seriously as a composer. That his image as a composer was like this, basically this song plugger, this Tin Pan Alley, like, sort of like lowbrow, like piano playing song plugger who happened to just kind of like stumble into, the American compositional world. It's like he wanted to be taken more seriously, rightfully so. He wanted to be considered like one of the serious, like American, like classical composers, but he also knew that he didn't really know how to orchestrate. He hadn't really studied harmony. Like he didn't really have the formal schooling, even though he had an enormous musical knowledge from being, from working on Tin Pan Alley. His musical instincts and intuition and, sort of like repository of melodies and everything was unbelievable. But he felt sort of inadequate because he hadn't gone to like conservatory and like been, formally educated as a composer, and he thought people would take him more seriously if he, sort of had a stamp of approval, like, no, this guy's the real deal, right? That's not a commercial, no, his music sells really well, but like an academic sort of like, boom. So he tried to study with Boulanger because then he would be like in the club of all those other composers. And Boulanger turned him away, saying famously, why? No, it's not Boulanger. Oh God, this story's about Ravel. Shoot. Oh, I messed this whole thing up. Okay, everything I said about Gershwin is true, except the person he went to study with was Ravel. Oh, this is so embarrassing. Well, okay, so he went to study with Ravel, and Ravel said, why would I want to make you a second-rate Ravel when you are already a first-rate Gershwin? Which ironically probably was just the stamp that Gershwin wanted, because Ravel basically was saying, you don't need to study with me. I can't teach you anything. You are already so good at what you do that I, Ravel, don't have really anything I can give you that would improve what you're doing, right? Now, if I were Gershwin at Ravel's doorstep hearing that, I'd be like, okay, fair enough. But could I just have one lesson? Like, I'd like to think my headcanon is that Gershwin didn't have any lessons with Ravel, but they did go like to dinner and go. I don't know if this is documented. I've read at least one biography of Gershwin, cover to cover, and I've glanced at others, and I've never seen anything about what kind of interaction Gershwin and Ravel actually had, apart from that famous story. I really hope they went to a restaurant or they went to a bar, that they just kind of hung out. God, that would be so cool. Gershwin and Ravel hanging out. Can you imagine? Oh, can you imagine being a fly on the wall if Gershwin and Ravel were sitting at a bar talking? I don't even care if they're talking about music. I just want to know what they're I don't even... if they were just talking to each other about their, you know, whatever, boring stuff, like grocery shopping or something, I would be like, oh my God, what are they saying? You know? I'm like that guy in Midnight in Paris. Great movie, Midnight in Paris, where he discovers like a taxi that can take you back in time. And Owen Wilson's character is so excited to get to meet his favorite authors, Hemingway, right? And who else is there? I should know this. It's Gertrude Stein, right? And he's like, and there's others, but he's at a bar with like Hemingway and all these famous writers, and they're like chatting, and he's like, you know, just like freaking out. This is so freaking cool, right? That's what I want to do with, well, Gershwin and Ravel and Stravinsky and Picasso, Schoenberg. Who else? I know there's probably a filmmaker in that group. Like in Los Angeles in the, I think it was 40s, 50s, mid-century, there was a time in Los Angeles when all these great intellectuals lived within miles of each other, you know, in West Los Angeles. Like Schoenberg and freaking, who was it? Schoenberg and who played tennis with Schoenberg? Alex Ross writes about this, and The Rest Is Noise. Oh gosh, I think it's Stravinsky. So there was like a cluster of these like famous people, like not just famous people. I mean like the great composers like Schoenberg and Stravinsky. I think Gershwin was in the mix at one point. Who else was there? Not Copeland. Did I mention? I forget. But anyways, they were like hanging out, like just as buddies. Oh, God, what I wouldn't give to be able to go back in time and just watch Rachmaninoff shooting the breeze with some, you know, oh, wouldn't that be amazing? Be on the tennis court while Schoenberg's playing tennis. Right. Anyways. All right. So I still haven't talked about this quote. That was a long digression. But the quote I heard attributed to Boulanger as a student. And I had to look it up. And in this particular article, it's attributed to just about everyone but Nadia Boulanger. They don't even mention her in this article. So I feel like I was lied to. But it looks likely that the quote was originally from the poet Paul Valéry, and that everyone else was probably sort of quoting him after that. So there it is. Well, I'm at that point where I need to work on the piece. I've been rambling long enough. But the quote seems like it's going to pertain to this particular piece. I feel as though the piece that I'm working on right now is not something that I can really finish because I don't know if I'll ever feel that it's finished. I'll always feel pulled to keep developing it further. That I haven't exhausted all the possibilities of the material. And I don't know that I could ever make that feeling go away. I think I would continue to write the piece, and to the extent that I distort it beyond recognition and that it becomes something very different from the original piece, that I lose the piece that I had written at first. Basically, like that I lose the plot, so to speak. That the piece was about something, specific and focused, and that I started trying to make the piece about all these other things, right? And then I lost that focus. So basically what I'm going to do now is actually take away some of the revisions that I did last time, because I slept on it and it felt pretty clear to me that the revisions that I was making were not really in the spirit of the piece. That they were not really what the piece is actually about, and that I was trying to just make it more complex just for the sake of making it more complex. So I can't do that. I want this piece to be focused, and I want it to be successful at stating what it originally set out to state, if that makes sense. So here we go. So I'm actually going to go back to the original simplicity of various passages. This whole thing that I spent so much time trying to figure out, for now, I'm going to cut it. And I could possibly find a way to use it much later in the piece as a kind of development of that material. I think I could actually use it before the middle section. So I'm going to plug it in right here. And I'll have to figure out how to integrate it if I do want to integrate it into the piece. But it would happen there. I want to restore measure 15 back to its original version, which I have to go back to a previous draft to find, but that's all right. I'll do that right now. So I'm currently on flow 22. So I think flow 21 would have no, it doesn't. All right, so we're going to check flow 20. Flow 20 does have the original version of those two bars. So I'm going to reinstate them. Ta-da. Reinstate them right here. Oh, this I had changed, so I need to change it back. There we go. Don't need that fingering. And this is repeating again. All right. So we're basically changing the piece back right now to its original form. Getting rid of most of the revisions, except for this one. I thought this inner voice actually kind of did work. And it ties in nicely to this. So let's see if I still like that. Okay, mute myself. Of course, I did just get another funky idea, which would be, what if I actually took out the first note of each of these groups? Sometimes you just can't help but try new things. And this is one of those cases. Wait, I want a stemlet here. Does it let you do that? I want this all beamed together with a stemlet, but that's not in my engraving options. Ah, damn it. Well, anyways, do I like the idea? Maybe. Was I unmuted this whole time? Yes. Once again, in the spirit of keeping things simple. Remember that phrase? KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah, in the spirit of keeping it simple, stupid. I'm the stupid one, of course. I'm going to keep it simple. Yeah. I think I learned that phrase from like a high school teacher. When I was your age, when I went to high school, there were still teachers. Maybe these teachers still exist. I don't know. But when I was in high school, you would have teachers who would say very sincerely to you, keep it simple, stupid. And they weren't just palling around or teasing, right? Sometimes, I think this teacher was either like my driver's ed teacher or a gym teacher or a wood shop teacher. It was one of those kind of, kind of rugged men types. And I distinctly remember him saying, "Keep it simple, stupid." It was like written like KISS. Maybe teachers still do that. I don't know. All right. But anyways, I'm keeping it simple, stupid. So get rid of these bars. Good. And now we are back to the original version of this idea. I do need to move these pedal lines around. They got all mixed up. And this measure, whatever this is, 13, 14, 15. Measure 15 is supposed to have the attacca, or not attacca, secco. It's supposed to have the secco marking, and somehow that got deleted too when I deleted all that material, so I have to copy it from a previous version. And here it goes. Back. I shouldn't be fussing around with adjusting the pedal line heights right now, or distances, but I'm going to because I'm super OCD about this stuff. And it just bothers me a lot. I don't want to save it for later. I want to get it right now. So there we go. That was really important to me, but I did it. Right. What else did I want to get rid of that I was making too complicated? I think it was right here. Right, okay, so this is the part where I do think I could use some of this revised material with the staccato fourthy chords. I'm going to get the original version, where is it, of the arpeggio, because I want to get rid of the quintuplet thing that I was doing. It doesn't need to go to the higher register, because that's what the staccato material is going to be for. So, where is it? Where'd it go? I gotta find it. Ah, here it is. So like this, I'm going to reinstate to the original version. Ugh, I deleted it, and then Dorico jumped me to a different page. I really, really hate this kind of stuff. So look, right now, if I press delete, it's going to jump me over to another spot because it automatically selected another note. That's horrible. I really, really wish Dorico wouldn't do that. Just keep me right where I'm at. I'm going to press delete. Watch. Oh, we lost our place. And now I'm like, where the hell am I? Oh, it's over here. Dorico, please stop doing stuff like this. Like, why? Okay, so the best way I can think for that not to happen is to go into galley view, which is such a silly name, and do it from here. Even then, it still jumps you over a little bit because it automatically has to select another note for some reason. I don't know why. So like if I were to zoom way in, it would be more of a problem. See? Oh no, it does keep you there. Okay. Why in page view it can't just like respect where the window is at? Like why it has to move the window around for you, I just do not know. See, I just pressed delete and it jumped over a page. That's, in my opinion, that's really, well, I don't want to say bad design because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about when it comes to user interface design, so who am I to judge? I just know it gets me really frustrated. And this was going to be a different thing to connect to them. That's it. So this is from an earlier revision. Oh wait, no. What did I do here to make this connect? It was... Yeah, I think it's that. It goes down like so. Oh, see, now I see. Maybe this... That's kind of clever. Once again, keep it simple, stupid. Only changing these patterns on the last one where it needs to connect to the higher register. So now I do get to have this stuff. Let's see if it works at this stage in the piece. That's the thing, because this stage in the piece is leading to a different section. So it makes sense to have a varied version of the material. Especially if the varied version of the material effectively leads into the new section. Does that make sense? Like it's good to vary your material for a reason, basically. Like, yes, varying your material just for the sake of keeping it interesting, I guess is a reason. But what I'm talking about is like, the variations should serve some other purpose, right? If you have a melody and then you restate that melody in a different way, the difference in the restatement should like lead to a different place, right? So like if you have A melody and then B melody and then A melody comes back and it's significantly varied or altered or whatever, and then B melody comes back in exactly the same way that it was before, that kind of seems to violate a principle of musical rhetoric, in my opinion. Which is that variation is meaningful. Like variation in material effects some kind of change. Now, I can see on the other side, someone watching this right now might be thinking about like the Chopin nocturnes, right? Where a whole big part of the piece is that the same melody keeps happening over and over, but with like significant variation each time, right? In the form of all these different filigrees and embellishments and stuff like that. That seems to completely deny my principle that variation should, lead to new places. I guess this is just a matter of your particular principles as a composer. Like, you have to disagree with other composers' principles. You have to. Otherwise, how could you write music that's like different from them, So you should understand what a composer's principles are. You should strive to understand that as much as one can. And you should, of course, respect those principles, and you should take them at face value and all these other things. But you shouldn't necessarily adopt them as your own principles, right? That's impossible anyways, because many composers have significantly differing principles and principles that contradict one another. You can't have all the same principles as a composer like John Cage and also have all the same principles as, say, I don't know, Chopin, right? Because they're basically incompatible, right? It's like, religions, right? I mean, oh no, religion's coming up. Okay. Well, but, I think it's fairly safe to say that one cannot truly be practicing multiple major religions simultaneously with genuine faith, because the religions contradict one another, oftentimes explicitly so. I've gotten into arguments with people about this very point, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but apparently there are people who believe that it wholeheartedly that it is possible to be a practicing believer of multiple religions simultaneously. Maybe it depends on what the religions are. I don't want to start naming religions for this purpose, but let's just say some religions are not particularly allowing of other religious beliefs, and some religions are. I think that's fairly safe to say. So if you are practicing multiple religions that are not particularly allowing of having other religious beliefs, then you're not really practicing those religions. Anyways, so should I put a timestamp for rambling about religion? No, but I am going to put a timestamp right now or a title card or whatever I want to call it, for what's this discussion? I guess identifying your compositional principles and sticking to them, more or less. Yeah, that's a timestamp for you. So like, what was I saying about this piece? Oh, I was talking about how the material is going to be varied here, but I believe, according to my compositional principles of what variation should accomplish in a piece, I think that the variation is now like warranted by what's happening in the piece, which is that something different is happening. Here, that variation that I was working on was not really warranted by the musical rhetoric, because the whole point of this brief transition in these two systems is to lead back to the original theme. It's an intensified version of the original theme, but it's very much the original theme. So it felt really odd for me to start like varying up my material in all kinds of ways when really it's supposed to be coming back, returning to the original theme, revolving around the center. So I thought, no, this material, the way I had it fashioned before, served exactly that purpose because it really kind of stays within the world of the piece and sort of just revolves back to the center. Here, I can have that variation in the material because now the piece is like destabilizing and some new idea is going to come up, right? So that like sort of strangeness or differentness in the material actually accomplishes something like in the form of the piece now, which is that it pushes it or it helps push it into a new section. All sounds good in practice. I'm sorry, all sounds good in theory. Now we have to see if it's actually working in practice. So we're going to start somewhere here on the third page and see if this transition to the B theme or the secondary, whatever, the middle section, whatever you want to call it, we're going to see if the transition to that is working now. So here goes. I think it's working. I think it's working. So now, when this melodic fragment comes in, when that fragment comes in the first time, it occurs twice. Okay, it occurs once in this register, and then it occurs again an octave lower, and it very quickly starts turning around back to the original theme with this little, and then up an octave again, and then the arpeggios come, and then we're back to the original theme. So going back to this melodic idea, now when it happens again later on page 3, now it occurs 3 times because it starts in a higher register and then goes down an octave and an octave again. Also, now it has the significantly changed harmony and texture. And that significantly changed harmony and texture is what's going to lead into the new theme. Now, that's not all perfect yet because I actually have to make some major changes to the left hand here to make it work. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And I'll say here, working on transitional material. Alrighty, so let's work on it. Okay, I need the stemlets. I need the stemlets. I really need these single chords to show where they are in the beat. It's really important to me. So I have to figure out now where the stemlet options are in Dorico. And this is going to be one of those fun adventures of searching the menus for what is the option that I have to change so that we'll have a beam and a stemlet come out of here. I don't know if it's in, excuse me, engraving, notation. It's probably, let's try engraving. Stems? Nope. No, not engraving. It's notation. Okay, stem. No. Rests. Beams and rests. All right, this is the one. And there's several options here. I have to think about it for a second. Rests in beam groups. Are these in beam groups? I want the allow. I actually don't know if I want the stemlet. I do want the beam to go over the rests, however. Okay, so allow rests within beams. Break all secondary beams. No. Allow part. Yes. Oh, see, this this innocuous little checkbox is the setting that I really want. Because watch what happens if I click apply without that checkbox checked. It's not going to give me the stemlets at the start of the beam. I'm sorry, at the it's not going to give me the beam at the start of the beat when there's a rest there. So if you're not careful, you'll miss this little checkbox. Now watch what happens. Now it's going to beam this 16th note here on the second 16th on the whatever you call it, and it's going to beam this note to this rest, which is what I want. Go. Apply. Get the little... Oh, it didn't. It made a liar out of me. Oh, that's embarrassing. All right. Where's the setting? Oh, it's back up here. Is it back up here? Oh, my goodness. I need the setting that's going to put a rest... put a beam onto a rest at the beginning of the beat. Ah, beam over rests. Wait, no, this is within eighth notes? Okay, that's probably not going to do it. I'll try it anyways. Didn't do it. Ooh. I wonder if I say use stemlets if it'll do it. Is it going to put a stemlet on that rest now? It did. But then it automatically puts stemlets on both directions. Is that what I want with the beam too? I don't think it is. It was this one. I missed it. Sometimes it feels like Dorico settings are like doing a puzzle. It feels like doing like a New York Times like puzzle. Because like here, I could not for the life of me figure out why the beam was not appearing on this rest. And as you heard, I got really excited because I was pretty sure that it was this little checkbox at the bottom. But as it turns out, it was actually this one that I just wasn't really looking at. Allow rests within beams and at the start and end of beams. That's going to give me the result I want. This is a classic case of RTFM, which I can't say because it's a little vulgar. But if you don't know what RTFM is, then please Google right now RTFM, because that's kind of what I need to do sometimes with Dorico. Anyways, all right, does that actually look better? I don't know if it does. Ugh. It was supposed to make this less confusing, and I almost feel like it made it more confusing. Shoot. It's embarrassing. Let's start. Wait, what is this? Allow partial beams on stemless rest. Wait, am I having a stroke? What the heck is this saying? Allow partial beams on stemless rest at start or end of beam. I don't know if I'm just stupid, but that sentence makes like absolutely no sense to me. What is that trying to say? Allow a partial beam. What is a stemless rest? Okay, it's a rest that doesn't have a stem from a beam. Allow partial beam on stemless rest. So really that's just saying allow a partial beam on a rest. Allow partial beam on a rest at start or end of beam. What happens if I uncheck it? Because right now I do have partial beams on these rests, right? Isn't that what these are? These are partial beams. At start or end of beam. Allow, I cannot for the life of me figure out what that is supposed to mean. It has no noticeable difference that I can discern on this passage, and if anything would show that difference, I thought it would be here. because of all these beams going to and from rests and over rests. So what the heck does that mean? Oh God. Anyways, oh, I do want to preserve the secondary beam over the rests because that'll give me the nice 16th note beam right here. Is it? No, it didn't. What? I want this to be a 16th note beam. Even though I know there's an 8th rest there, it's just a convention. You can have a 16th note beam here. Break all secondary beams at rests when duration differs. That's what it's doing right now. But preserve secondary beam over oh, it won't do it because it's not the same duration. So this would have to be 16th notes in order for it to respect that. What if I break it into 16th notes? Yeah, then it does it. But then what's the difference? Break at rest when duration differs. Oh, I see. Wow, that is really subtle. Look, this example, I was trying to figure out what's the difference between these two examples. It kind of feels like Where's Waldo, or like one of those like picture books for kids, like find the differences. Try to find the difference between these two pictures. Can you find it? Did you find it already? Because it took me a while to figure out what the heck the difference was between these two pictures. I see the difference here. I see the big break in the secondary beams. But I didn't see it here until I realized that here in the left example, look, the second group, they have a 32nd note beam, or I should say the 8th note beam and the 16th note beam, and then the 32nd note beam is broken. In this one, notice only the top beam remains and the bottom two are broken. Okay, maybe I'm just an idiot, but that seems like an incredibly subtle difference. Why they even have an option for that, I don't really understand. But again, I don't think I understand a lot of things. So that was a long diversion. For what I really want here is for the left-hand rhythm to be really clear. Now, the way I've just done it is probably the worst way of all. That could probably look really confusing to someone. So I should probably restore the rests to their proper durations. Like this is an 8th note, this is an 8th note, this is an 8th note. And I should probably just get rid of the stemlets again. The thing is, where was it? Oh, shoot. The thing is, I think rhythms like this are always hard to read no matter how you notate it. So like if I have no beams here, is it easier or harder? I don't know, honestly. Like here, I'm gonna get rid of the beams and you're gonna see just the 16th note flags. Once it finishes loading. Nope, it didn't. It always makes a liar out of me. I said break beams at rests. That's the setting I just did. Break beams at rest. Why didn't it break the beam? What's the setting? Allow, oh, use stemlets. No, I don't want any of those. Allow rests within beams? I guess I have to do that one. Right? Will this get rid of the beam? How do I get rid of those darn beams? Break beams at rests. That's it. Oh, gosh, Kenneth. Beams and, yeah, that's going to do it. Better. Yeah, there it is. Right? No. Wait, why is it going back and forth? Okay, whatever. Ay. Right, so is this any easier to read and to get the rhythm correct? I don't think so. I think it's even harder, honestly, but I don't want this because it's supposed to be staccato. This would be easier to read the rhythm, but, well, maybe it's a good articulation anyway. Maybe. Yeah, and then this can be a staccato 8th note as well. Only this one has to be a 16th note because it looks even more confusing if it's an 8th note, in my opinion. So it has to be a 16th note. It's still staccato. Oops. It's still staccato. Ah, what am I doing? Where's the staccato shortcut? There it is. This one actually could be legato because it just sounds cool anyways. I wanted all of these to be staccato, but now I'm thinking maybe having this legato actually sounds kind of cooler anyway. Nah, wait. We're going to keep it as is for now. And then this, we're just going down on fourthy chords, folks. Like, that's all you got to do sometimes is just like a bunch of fourth chords in a row. Like, you don't have to like overthink it. Like, you're allowed to do a bunch of fourth chords in a row. Like, if it sounds good, it sounds good. Like, no one's gonna be like, you just did a bunch of fourthy chords. Like, were you even like thinking? Like, no, if it sounds good, it sounds good. Sounds good to me. If you think it sounds bad, then good for you. But I like it. Yep, not that. Maybe? Here's what we're going to do. We are going to make this G an inner voice that doesn't move. So change voice 2, down stem voice 1. Change voice 2, down stem voice 1. That's going to be a half note, and then these are going to move. That's a cool way of doing it. Oop, right. Go away. There we go. So like this. I like that chord a lot. I do want to re-articulate the G though, because that major seventh is really important. But you do hear it when it's tied, but the player has to be kind of sensitive to it so they don't blur too much with pedal. Like, that's not good. And really keep that G nice and strong. I almost want to put an accent on the G. That might be overkill, but yeah. And I almost want to have this be in 4/4 and actually have this hold for 3 beats. I know it significantly changes the flow of the phrase now, which is not what I had before, but yeah. So we're on to something now. We're going to make this one 4/4 as well, and we're going to have a different harmony that happens in the left hand. Now we're cooking. Now we're cooking. This is going to be the same rhythm, but with different chords, because now it's going to start on the C instead of a B, and now it's going to go down from there. That's going to help us get to the different harmony. Does this work? I'm not crazy about that chord. Then we're stuck on. Ooh, wait a second. Hello. Yes. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I wanted. And now it gets us to another different chord. Heck yes. That's where it feels good. You know, that's when the process starts to feel good. You're like, I'm getting it. I'm getting what I wanted. And what I wanted wasn't like some particular kind of material. It's not like say that like I had a particular like judgment about or preconceived notion about the kind of material I want. It's just that I'm getting back to that sense that the material is really working. It's really grooving. It really has a kind of a exciting, fun feel to it. Like sometimes when you're working through a thorny issue, it starts to feel like your material is fighting you, or that you're fighting it, and you're getting frustrated with it, and you're starting to resent it, and you're not really enjoying composing anymore, right? And it's like, but you have to work through that. That's discipline, right? And you try to not get too frustrated with yourself and just, you know, really give yourself some grace and be gentle and patient and all that stuff. But the feeling will still be there to some extent. Like, you can be patient with yourself, but you can still feel like you're frustrated with how things are going. It's just the nature of the game, right? But then when you get back to the feeling of joy, you appreciate it all the more, that feeling of joy, because you're like, this feels good again, right? Like I'm back in it now. I'm back in the pocket. So anyways, that's enough talking. Let's keep working on this material. Oh, I didn't finish doing this chord. So this is going to be That might be too hip. I don't know. Hey, you know what? I'm feeling a little dangerous tonight. I think we're gonna do it. Oof. Ah! Just gotta think for a second. Do I really want that? Where's it going? It has to do this melody one more time. Maybe. One more time on the staccato chords, but with different voicing now. So now that they're not going to be fourthy chords anymore. I just got it pasted. I did the 5 there. Okay, so now they're not going to be fourthy chords anymore. They're going to be... That's a fourthy chord. Ooh, see now we're cooking. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. I am struggling with the harmony here a little bit. I wanted to get away from the fourthy chords here. It does sound good though. But let's have this be really different now. Really different. I want it to lead to this F sharp sus chord. So I want it to be a progression that actually naturally cadences on this F sus 4/7 chord. How can I make that work? What's a progression that lands there naturally? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chords long. Some kind of cycle. Could be a sequence. Could be a sequence that ends on the F sharp. Start a sequence and then just see how it wraps around. So let's do like an ascending fourth, down by second. Oh. Let's do it down by, yeah, hold on. So yeah, I mean that could work. So I need the right number of chords though. This is where sometimes you have to get your sketching out. I don't sketch enough. This is why I have to go back to pencil, paper, because when I write by hand, when I write by hand, I naturally do a lot of sketching, a lot. I don't commit something to the piece without actually working it out, like thoroughly. Like, I mean, I'll write different versions of it. It's the same as a visual artist who's sketching for a painting, right? You look at, I don't know, like Leonardo da Vinci's sketches, right? He does many sketches of the same thing, right, to work it over, and that's what artists do. Composers have to do the same thing. This is one of the difficult things about composing directly into a DAW. A DAW does not encourage you to do sketches. It's not set up to do that, right? The whole point of it, I'm sorry, not a DAW, a notation program. A notation program's whole point is to get the piece, right? To ingest the completed piece. Like, I know people say, well, you can do sketches with a notation program. Yes, of course you can. Don't get me wrong. I do it. I have tons of sketches in my notation programs, but you have to think about stuff like file management, right? You have to think about, am I going to save this as a different file within the same folder and have a project folder with all these files of sketches? Or am I going to save these different sketches as different, like, movements within a single file? Or am I going, like I'm doing here with my different drafts, right? And having all these different drafts, and these aren't really sketches, but they're different drafts, but the drafts themselves sort of have sketches in them, right? Like you can see sometimes I just throw some material randomly into the draft at some random point because I'm sketching, right? So you have to think about that with a notation program. When you're writing by hand, you don't think about that because you just, anything that pops into your head, you just put it right down on the page, and then you don't have to worry about losing it later because it's not in a destructive data format like digital data is, right? Digital data, you can constantly be overwriting anything that you've done in the past if you're not careful to deliberately save different versions. That's the nature of digital data, right? Is that it's destructive or destructible by nature, whereas a physical medium like pen and paper, it requires as much energy to destroy the material as it did to create it, right? I mean, physically speaking, like if you're writing with pen on manuscript paper, you have to literally use whiteout. You have to apply yet another medium onto the page in order to destroy the material. It's not going to automatically be overwritten at some point the way a digital file very easily is when you put in new data. So all that's to say, I don't sketch as much on my notation programs as I should, but this is an example of doing a sketch. I just inserted several dummy bars that are going to go away because really this is going to go from bar 37 to bar 42. I did that so that I can have the sequence. And the sequence, I don't actually need the whole sequence. I only need the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I only need the last 5 chords of it. So I'm actually going to work up from, because it's going to land on this F sharp. So this F sharp represents this F sharp. So I just need to count back 5 chords from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Get rid of the rest. Boom. Now I'm going to come up with my harmony for these 5 chords. And the tricky thing here is it has to sort of match with this harmony. So this would be, these are actually going to be, this one's a chord note and the rest of these are, actually, wait, no, this is how we're going to do it. We need to map these notes onto these rhythms. So I can easily do that by using lock rhythm with Dorico, and this is going to be our bass line now. Oh, oops, I forgot this is actually going to be 1 chord. So let's do that again. And now the rest are going to be 1 note at a time. There we go. All right. Actually, yeah, I think we're done with the sketchy material. No, we're not, because I'm going to experiment here with the harmony. So that's why I'm going to keep the sketchy version right here, what I'm calling the sketchy version. I'll even separate it further. All right, so does this work? The spelling's weird. Why does it have an F sharp, or an E sharp? There we go. Oh, wait. Oh, no. Oh, I've started in a bad place. That was not a good idea. This whole idea might be moot. That is a little too funky for me, folks. That sounds a little bit like, just doesn't make sense. No. That's okay, because we can use the same procedure for generating the sequence. So I just sort of arbitrarily decided, hey, what if my sequence was this? ascending fourths sequence down a second on the whole tone scale. But guess what? There's a million different kinds of sequences you can do. So I'm going to start another sequence on F and see if it maps nicely onto this melody here. So it should probably be a sequence that doesn't stray too far from this particular pitch collection. So it should probably be a sort of E minor diatonic-ish sequence. So let's try the ascending fourth, descending by second, but we're going to keep it within the E natural minor scale. I don't know if this will work either, but just finding ways. So count back 5 notes, get rid of the rest. There we go. And once again, let's try mapping that bass line onto the rhythm that I've established before. Yeah, let's do it this way. So, will this work? Working better when I was just having fun and playing with it. I think I'm starting to overthink it. I'm starting to get in my own way. I need to actually go back to just using my intuition and not trying to over compose it. So what was working here? I was using fourthy chords. I don't want to go to the E minor. That feels premature. To start on the same chord that we're going to. It does help it feel cyclical. That's kind of the point, right? Let's just we can stick with the fourthy chords. I won't get sued. It's all right. What am I doing here? That's kind of gross. I don't know. I don't need this bass clef anymore. Okay. Now I've kind of robbed that F sharp of its potency, so I do need to find a way to make this work. Let's see. Dominant 7 chord on this beat, or B dominant 7, and they both kind of sound cool. Or I think the B dominant 7 is a little spicier, thanks to this flat 9 feel. The left hand's a little awkward. Yeah, that's a little awkward, but I could just have it be that. Change the voicings, because like if I did a voicing like that, now the voicing is very different. Up to that point, it's been all fourth chords, fourth, and then here this like big funky dominant chord. But here, that's a very different kind of voicing, and the hand has to suddenly do a new shape that it hasn't done before, which can feel really awkward. Let's just keep it like that, but I still want to get away from the fourth chords here on this last go. Oh, that kind of works, actually. Yeah, maybe descending dominants. Oh, but it doesn't get us all the way down. Yeah, then it doesn't work with the F sharp. We're almost there, though. spells. Why would it spell it like that? Come on, really? With a double sharp and not just B flat? Seriously? What were they thinking? Why was that the default spelling? Really? Don't tell me it's because of the harmonic context around it, because that, like, half the time it does not understand harmonic context at all. So I don't know why. Okay, whatever. Here. Last couple chords. That's how it goes sometimes. You know, the first significant difference is easy because you feel totally free. Then, like, each subsequent iteration becomes more and more mentally taxing because now you feel like your thinking is getting like squeezed into a narrower and narrower scope of options. So now it's becoming harder and harder because now you're trying to satisfy like all these different parameters that you weren't trying to satisfy before, right? It's like, this is the last time, I want it to be in this particular register, it needs to lead into this particular harmony with the F sharp chord, like all these things. And so now it's like, oh, I have like way fewer options than I did before. Like now I have to like make this work somehow. That's a little too ugly. Nice, but not practical. I can also change the rhythm. Why am I stuck on this rhythm? I don't have to use the same rhythm every time. What am I thinking? This last time could actually just be all eighth notes. See, come on, can I think like a composer? You know, like, you get to change things. This is half the fun of composing. Look, this time we're gonna do it like that. That's cool. Why didn't I think of that sooner? See, you get to change as much as you want. So now let's have it be just descending. Ooh. Maybe. No, it doesn't work at all. But we're onto something. See, we could have it get Ravel here for a second. And sequence. No, that's not what I wanted. Wait, hold on. Yeah. Why doesn't it? Is there a sequence this way that leads back to the F sharp? Kind of. Still kind of awkward. Shoot. Maybe. The minor seventh here is almost more interesting than the sus4. Like if I were to do that. Yeah, hold on a second. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Now, we still have to make the sequence get to it. Now the sequence actually leads to it, though. Wait, I didn't get this right. This is supposed to be... There we go. Now it should work, maybe. Does the right hand work with it? Ugh, not quite. Dang it. I was so close. Should I change the right hand now? I don't want to change it on the last run. I wanted to have the left hand be what keeps changing, but not the right. But maybe I'm being too picky. change the left-hand voicing. Like so. That should work. Yeah, that's like Ravel-ish. I hope that didn't sound like hubris. I don't mean to compare the quality of my music with Ravel's, which surely would be hubris. As I said before, I worship Ravel. I mean, this material is definitely inspired by Ravel, in the sense of like its sort of harmonic sensibility, I guess you might say. I think that would probably be pretty obvious to anyone listening to it. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, this guy likes Ravel." But I don't know. It can still be kind of helpful to, I guess, become consciously aware of where your influence is coming from. Change voice to upstem voice. Like if you write a passage and go, "Yeah, I'm getting Ravel with it," and then you listen to it and you're like, "Yeah, that kind of does sound like something Ravel might write." I don't know. I think that's a good thing because then you're like, I don't know. I guess it's good to be aware of your influences sometimes. As long as you don't feel oppressed by them, you know? Like, Harold Bloom has a great book called The Anxiety of Influence. This is the kind of Harold Bloom that I really like. I'm not a huge fan of Harold Bloom, the like declaiming, like sort of self-appointed like gatekeeper of the Western canon. That part of his output is like kind of, I don't know. It's kind of weird to me. It's kind of cringy. But the part of his output that is insightful criticism, like insightful literary criticism, without trying to like, you know, sort of shove his like principles in your face, but where he's like, you know, just taking a reading of some great literature. That's Harold Bloom at his best. And his book, The Anxiety of Influence, is a fascinating read where he makes a characteristically debatable claim that, if I understand it correctly, it's been years since I read this book, but he claims that poets are influenced by other poets to a large degree due to their misreading of those other poets, due to their sort of like reading into the poetry things that aren't necessarily there and sort of projecting their own like biases and desires onto the poetry, and like that like poets are almost it's almost like the genesis of their original ideas is sometimes an erroneous interpretation of another poet's ideas, and that they okay, so here I'm probably speculating too much because it's been so long since I read the book. I don't remember exactly what it was saying, but here I'm kind of taking my take on it, that like poets sort of evade the anxiety of being overly influenced by another poet almost unintentionally, because whenever they're trying to address the same themes or the same ideas that their influences addressed, they're addressing it in a radically different way because they are reading that influencing poet like in a way that that poet probably didn't intend to be read. That's very circuitous, but basically I understand it to mean that like as a musician, when I feel that something is very strongly betraying my influences, I've learned to not shun that. It's easy as a composer to shun your influences because you don't, like, you need to cover your tracks and you don't want people to feel like you're just derivative and you don't have original ideas and all these things. Like, we have all these anxieties about our influences being too clear, too obvious, or not transcended enough, or whatever. And so when you encounter your influences like in a conscious way, you're like, oh, this material sounds a lot like Ravel. I wonder if people are going to judge me for that. Like, you have that anxiety, but if you listen to your work without that anxiety, you just listen to the piece, basically forget what you were influenced by, who was influencing you when you wrote it. If you just listen to it on its own like terms, you'll really enjoy it. And those passages that you thought wow, that sounds way too much like Ravel. When you were writing it, then when you hear it later, you're like, I don't hear that. Like, I don't feel like I was ripping off Ravel here. It just sounds like, an idea that, yeah, I can hear the similarity, but it's not like whatever. I don't know why I was anxious about it, basically. So here, I'm going to play this passage in context now and see if this measure that I feel like, wow, people are going to really think I am ripping off Ravel. Does it really sound that way when I play it? I don't know. We're going to find out. I'm going to play it and listen. Gotta fix the articulation. This should not be staccato. What was I thinking? All right. I think it works. I think it works. I think I'm getting there. I think the train's finally starting to pull into the station. Is that a weird analogy? Maybe that analogy has to do with something else. Bring the train to the station. Never mind. I mean, it feels like we're starting to arrive at the sort of final form of the piece. Like it's starting to become really clear what the piece is doing. So, maybe I spoke too soon because this blasted ending. Everything all through here, by the way, is great. I shouldn't say great. Sorry, that sounds arrogant. But I mean, it's great to me. Like it's all good. I have no anxiety about touching these sections at all. Like this middle lyrical section, I don't want to touch it. I'm very happy with it. I'm not gonna mess with it. The climax I think is good. I was sort of playing it around with having some more stuff happen in the climax. Like maybe I want this to get really, really big. Like I was thinking, okay, so great climaxes in musical history in the piano literature. And I'm talking about like just absurd, like crazy, huge fireworks. Like it's like the most out of this world thing you've ever seen, right? These kinds of climaxes. The first one that comes to mind is actually Ravel, is from Gaspard de la Nuit, the famous Scarbo movement. Actually, all three of the movements, Ondine, Le Gibet, and Scarbo, those are the three movements, I'm pretty sure. All three of them have amazing climaxes, but Scarbo especially has one of those musical climaxes that is just like out of this world. It's like, what am I hearing? You have that with Rachmaninoff. This might not be the best example, but it's the one that comes to mind for some reason. His final prelude, the prelude in D flat major from Opus 32. So it would be Opus 32 number 10, I think. I'm so bad with remembering Opus numbers. I think it's Opus 32. I think the second set only has... No, the second set has 13, right? Yeah, I think the second... Okay, so I could look it up right now, but I'm being... whatever. So the final Rachmaninoff prelude in D flat. The climax of that is like one of my all-time greatest moments in musical literature. I've listened to it over and over and over. I've transcribed it. I've played it over and over. It's like so unbelievably gorgeous, and so it's like you can't make a piano sound bigger than that. And it sounds like a full orchestra is playing. It sounds like a full pipe organ with all the stops. It's like that's as big as it gets, you know? So you have to kind of scale the climax of your work to the scope of the piece. If you try to have this pulling out all the stops, crazy, like virtuoso, like insane, whatever kind of climax in a piece that's not a huge piece, it's kind of, maybe it doesn't work, right? But if you have a huge piece that is anticlimactic, then that doesn't work either, right? So I'm like, what is the scale of this piece, and what's the level of intensity that I should bring to this climax? Like, does it need to be longer and have more stuff happen in order for it to feel like it really like not weighs down, like it really is substantial enough for this piece. So this piece, as it stands right now, with the ending still having some issues, is 8 pages. Probably going to end up being 9, actually, because I do think I'm going to expand this ending a little bit in a way. So it's an 8 or 9 page piece. All right. So just for comparison's sake, let's look at Rachmaninoff, because there's a composer who knew how to write a good climax. Composers that come to mind for writing really, really effective climactic moments for piano, of the composers that I love, of course, I mentioned Ravel. Ravel always has a great climax in his piano pieces. Debussy, and Debussy knows exactly where to put it, how long it should be, how intense it should be, all that stuff. Actually, I should look at Debussy first, because I think Debussy writes some of the best musical climaxes. And I apologize if I'm saying the word climax a lot. It is what it is, you know? It's like, there's no way around it. You have to use that word. And is there a better word that's not potentially oddly suggestive? I don't know. So like a Debussy piece that has a really big climax would be the first movement of Children's Corner, Dr. Gratis ad Parnassum. I should just play it. I'm talking way too much. Oh, and this is a good place to put in another like timestamp. So, musical climaxes. This I was already talking about it for a bit, but examples from Debussy et al. Right. So where am I? Let's just go back to Dorico. But I'm going to play this Debussy example here. So the climax of the first movement of Children's Corner is so beautiful, so sparkling. Let's hear a little bit of it. Man, that wasn't great. A little embarrassing. But anyways, that sparklingness, notice this is not like a huge Rachmaninoff climax that I was talking about before, or a huge Scarbo where it's flying all over the keyboard kind of climax. No, it's sparkly, brilliant, and sort of transparent, precise. The piece is like that through the whole piece. And how many pages is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's a perfect climax for a light, brilliant 5-page piece. Can I find a climax that's of the right proportion for my piece? What's a Debussy piece that's 9 pages? Debussy didn't tend to write longer movements. He's Lyle Joyeuse, maybe, would be a good one. 226. My friends in my undergrad teased me about this Debussy volume, this Debussy edition that I have right here. I know, I'm not a serious musician because I have the Debussy Ultimate Piano Collection published by Schirmer. I get it. I need to have the Durand and etc. By the way, I do actually have fancy Debussy editions. Where are they? Look at the autograph of the Preludes. I have the Henley of, which one was Sweet Bergamasque? I have the Durand of Children's Corner. I have the Henley of, don't judge me, I have the Henley standalone version of Clair de Lune. Oh, that's basic. I'm sorry, folks. It's basic. I'm a basic pianist. Yes, I did pay money for the Henley standalone. Not even, look, I have Sweet Bergamasque, which is the suite that this comes from. I have the entire thing, Henley, but I don't remember which one I got first, but I did get the standalone for Clair de Lune because whatever. Anyways, what was it? Do I have any more Debussy's here that I can pull out to prove my point? But I've gotten a lot of mileage out of this volume. I know, pianists will tease you. Oh, the Debussy Ultimate Collection, Shermer, really? Don't you want a better edition? Shut up. Lyle joyeuse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh boy. 12, 13. Ooh, this is a big piece. I forgot how big of a piece this is. Lyle joyeuse is like 13 pages in the Shermer edition. That's a substantial piece, folks. That is a... And this is a monster of a piece. I don't know how difficult it's supposed to be according to like some grading scale. I've never learned it. I've played through it, but I've never tried to learn it for performance. I think it's a little bit above my pay grade, technically, to be honest. I wish that weren't the case, but I could probably pull this off, maybe. Maybe I should try to learn it. Anyways, it's a great single movement show-offy kind of piece that gets all of the wonderful things Debussy does in one big piece. Lyle joyeuse is a pretty good representation of Debussy's pianistic language. He throws in a lot of stuff here. Like, if you want a single piece that represents everything that Debussy did at the keyboard up to a certain point, Lyle joyeuse is a pretty strong contender. He doesn't innovate, this is kind of a hot take, but he doesn't innovate much more than this particular piece until the etudes. The etudes are where Debussy really broke from his piano writing up to that point. I'm not saying he was getting comfortable or complacent or anything like that, but it's like we have Debussy's like sort of early works like the Reverie and Suite Bergamasque and stuff, Pour le Piano, and then like we start getting into the more middle works where he's getting more experimental with texture and timbre and resonance and harmony and all these things. And then a lot of Debussy's piano material kind of occupies that middle phase. A lot of the stuff that we really, really love of Debussy, the preludes, Image, which is an earlier piece, but it's there, I think. Reflet d'un Lot, which is, again, still an earlier piece, but solidly within this like middle, like atmospheric phase or whatever you want to call it. Then the big break, I think, is with the etudes. The etudes are where he just is like, screw it, I'm gonna like do all this like new different stuff. He does recapitulate a lot of his old ideas. Yes, he does have these characters and themes that kind of always keep coming back, but the etudes are where he really set out with a new style. And then he freaking had to die, and we don't get any more like serious like late works. It drives me nuts. Imagine if Beethoven had died right when he wrote the Hammerklavier Sonata, right? Like the Hammerklavier Sonata, I think is a good benchmark. I think it's supposed to be the benchmark. I guess the Waldstein typically is the benchmark work that separates kind of the middle to the late works, I think. Yeah. Well, okay. Waldstein is a fine example too. Imagine if Beethoven had died somehow, God forbid, when he wrote the Waldstein Sonata, and then we didn't have any of the late sonatas. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what a loss for music that would be? It's unimaginable, right? Because we do have those late works and we rejoice in them. They're revelatory genius. Okay, I feel like that's what has actually happened with a great many composers, including Debussy. I feel like for Debussy, the etudes are like this benchmark. It should be this bookmark piece that then sets off a huge chunk of music that we would call Debussy's late period. And it makes me like lose my mind with grief and rage that Debussy gave us the etudes and the late sonatas, the late instrumental sonatas, and then died. Because he clearly was on the verge, or not on the verge, he clearly had made these huge compositional breakthroughs and was about to enter this like incredible like new phase of new ability and new power. What's the point, right? You can do this with a great many composers. Everyone does this like with Mozart, right? What if Mozart had lived, another 10 years, right? Not just to finish the Requiem, but then to write all these other symphonies and string quartets and everything else. What if, Schubert. You know, you can do all these composers that died young. Same with rock and roll musicians or whoever. Debussy is one that hurts me a lot because I love the etudes so much, and I so wish there were more piano works that Debussy had written after the etudes. But I digress. All right, La Joyeuse. We're looking for a climax here. 13 pages. The scale is different from my piece. It's bigger, so I have to keep that in mind. But the climax of La Joyeuse is the last 2 pages. Kind of interesting. A 13-page piece, you might think that the big climax would be like a whole 3 pages or more, 4 pages. But no, it's only 2 pages, I would argue. I would argue the climax of La Joyeuse starts here. Sorry. Sorry, I don't know the piece, so I apologize for my horrible playing, but you get the idea. This section. Yeah, so this is an incredible piece. Good Lord, I gotta learn this piece. Right, that's the climax, and it's the last 2 pages. Really almost more like page and a half, page and 3/4. So this is just to give myself some perspective. I'm tossing my scores all around, but to give myself some perspective for how big the climax of my own piece should be. I'll look at one more example from Rachmaninoff to try to find one with a similar scale. Maybe one of the longer preludes. What's one of the longer preludes? Maybe the prelude. Actually, the one I mentioned before, the D-flat major prelude, I'm pretty sure is the longest one, the biggest one. How many pages is it? I think it's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's 6. 6 pages. So again, slightly different scale from my piece, which is getting into like 9 pages. So the Rachmaninoff climax is, it's a whole 2 pages. Isn't that interesting, folks? Rachmaninoff's climax is 2 pages out of a 6-page piece. So that means a whole third of the piece, the last third, the last 33% of the piece, basically, is a huge epic climax. The Debussy La Joyeuse, we only had 2 pages of climax for a 13-page piece, which means that it's less than a fifth of the piece. Okay, so the climax can be different proportions and all that stuff. Is this helpful? Well, yes, because in any case, I think that proportionally, the climax of my piece is probably pretty shrimpy. If I'm really considering these 3 measures to be the climax, which I kind of do, I think it's basically got this big moment here. That's the big climax of the piece. It does get big here, but I don't know if you really hear this as a climax. This is more of like a big retransition. And then it doesn't climax at the end, it just sort of dissipates. So that means that the real true climax of the work is basically 3 bars. 3 bars out of a 9-page piece. Is that anywhere close to the proportions that I stated of Rachmaninoff and Debussy? No, nowhere close. This material really probably should be fleshed out quite a bit more and get quite a bit more substantial. It's worth looking into. I'm going to come back to it because I also need to look at the ending, which once again I've kind of pulled apart. I'm not satisfied with it yet. I'm still not satisfied. I think I could do a lot more with these arpeggios. Where should I start? I was getting stuck on the ending before, so let's go back into the climax and see if I want to find something here. That means I'm going to start playing from... Oh, hell, let's just play the piece. Let's just play the whole piece. That's a good thing to put in the title card. So, playing entire piece through. I'm going to play the entire piece through with sketchy ending. All right, so here we go. Let's play the entire piece and see what happens. Okay, a few thoughts. No, I can't think it out loud. I just have to do it. I see. What did I do here? I need these sextuplets. I think it was 2 bars of sextuplets. I don't know. Now what am I doing? I just need to write some sextuplets. Okay, give me sextuplets 6 to 4. And please keep it going. Wait, oh, so this, how many beats was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't want it to be 5, 4. Maybe it could be. Change to 3, 4 here. Yes, it should. Yes. I see now. Yes, yes, yes. And then get rid of these bars. And then this is all still going to be cue sized. I think this should all be cue sized. Because I want that crystalline effect all the way back here. Ooh. Why is that? It's because it kept the offset. There we go. Placement can be below because the left hand's going to be resting here. Does this work? Yes, I don't need these 2 bars anymore. This A flat has to start sooner. It has to start like back here, let's just say. But yes, 3, 4, don't need that. And then I don't think I want this ripoco poco either. This actually should be in a cello. Just for a few bars. Why did it make it so long? I just want the cello to be over these 3. Oh, because see, it selected the A flat, and then it thinks the cello. So even though I only selected the notes up to this bar line, watch, it's going to put the cello all the way to the end. Because it selected the 8va, and then thinks that that's the like anchor point for this command that I want. So I have to deselect the 8va for that HL to go to end in the right place. And nope, it still only ended it there. Why is it doing that? Watch this. Look, HL. I want the HL. I have all these notes selected. That means I want the HL line to go up to here, to the end of my selection. It doesn't put it. It puts it there. It put it in some like arbitrary place. What the heck, Dorico? Oftentimes feel like Dorico is willfully stubborn. So now it did it correctly because I also had to deselect the crystalline because it thought that that was the anchor point for the HL. That's really weird stuff, man. Whatever. Where was I? HL. Feels weird to see 2 lines at the same time, a dotted line and dashed line. That really trips my brain out. I don't like that. I almost wonder if I'm going to rewrite this pattern now a little bit. But that'll wait because I have to go to the bathroom. So I'll be right back. I'm back from the bathroom, which means I'm gonna put back on my title card. You know, live streaming is such an odd thing. I I'm not sure I really understand it. Like, not just from a technical level. Clearly, my technique is not that sophisticated. I'm just sharing my screen and I'm using my webcam on my computer, and I do not have a fancy live streaming setup, obviously. I know there are people who, I know it's a whole thing. I have not interacted with live streamers pretty much at all. I don't think I've almost ever watched a live stream. I know it's like a huge genre. I guess there's like even in some cultures or some like subcultures or whatever, it's like a huge deal or something. I don't really know anything about that. Um, and truthfully, I don't really know what it's for, at least in my case, because like I said, I haven't really watched live streamers. Um, so I guess I'll put here because I'm rambling about live streaming. I'll say thoughts on live streaming in general. Um, so it's probably silly and foolish to for me to be producing media in a genre that I know absolutely nothing about, which is live streaming, and that's exactly what I'm doing right now. Like, I don't know what the expectations are. I don't know what the technique is supposed to be. Like, I guess if I were to watch other live streamers, at least in this genre of music, I'd probably quickly see, oh wow, like there's all these things I need to like be aware of or think about, like as far as like my my technical setup, my cameras and microphones and all these things. Um, but beyond that, I don't want to say I don't know what's the point of it, because there's a big point to live streaming for me. Like, I get a lot of benefit from it. That's why I started doing this in the first place, is so I can hear myself think out loud. And actually watching my live streams back is very helpful for me, because I'm seeing how I'm working through these issues, and I'm having a different perspective on it because I get to like observe it. Um, so I'm like thinking like, oh, Kenneth, like, you should stop overthinking this one particular thing and just do it or whatever. Like, I have those realizations as I'm watching later. It's almost like I'm getting to like critique myself. I mean, that's the thing that musicians do, right? Like, you have to do it. If you're a performer, if you're an instrumentalist, you watch videos of yourself playing so that you know how to improve. And that's what athletes do as well. Um, they watch tape, so to speak, like Michael Jordan, like watched tape of of his own games and other games, right? But like, um, anyways, but like as composers, maybe do we have a way of doing that? We get to hear our pieces in concert, but do we have a way of watching ourselves at work? Well, I guess the way would be, one way could be participating in a master class that's filmed, and then you could watch that and watch yourself receiving feedback from an instructor, which I've done. I mean, that's part of being a composer, a composition student, right? Oftentimes, master classes are filmed, and it's a wonderful thing that they are, right? And it's beneficial for everyone. Not the least of which is the composer, who can then watch it later, and if they're like keen on learning from the experience, they'll watch the tape later and learn as much as when they were actually sitting there in the room. Probably more, because when you're sitting in the room, you're all nervous, and the person is, if it's a great composer that you really admire, you're like focused on like not embarrassing yourself, and maybe you're not hearing what they're saying as well as you should or whatever. Or I don't know, maybe that sounds terribly silly of me to say that, but if you watch the tape later, you go, oh yeah, I think I really understand what he was saying now. Or I think I understand, like when she showed me that example at the keyboard, oh, now I really hear it, whatever. um, so like live streaming for me is kind of a way of doing that too. It's like a way of getting back into my creative process after it occurred and thinking about it from another perspective. Um, what's the point of all this? All right, so that's why I'm live streaming, but it's also such a weird thing to know that like I'm broadcasting my compositional process for anyone to hear, because as I might have mentioned before, composition has always been an intensely um, private process for me, as I think it ought to be for most people, especially when you're still new to it and you're still learning. You really need time to work in solitude. I mean, still, the vast majority of your work should be in solitude, even after you're at a place where you're comfortable with other people being or witnessing it. Um, so I don't know. Maybe this is also partly just an experiment for me to try this. And I've been in a little bit of a rut lately as a composer. So this live streaming thing is also a way for me to like break through that a little bit. And there's a reason that these pieces are called new pieces. I have a set of four. Um, One is basically finished. The other two are still sketches. I should say, besides this, so this one is almost finished, and then number three is almost finished. I haven't shown it yet. Numbers 2 and 4 are still totally in sketch mode. But these are the first new, truly new pieces that I've written in quite a while. I shouldn't go down this whole rabbit hole, but suffice to say for now that I have a huge back catalog. I think huge, honestly. I mean, literally hundreds of short piano pieces. I do not exaggerate when I say that. Um, I've written many, many short piano pieces, finished with a double bar, that I've never had published or performed or anything. And I can't help but going and continually revising those pieces and tinkering with them and thinking if I could just get them right, then I'll finally be able to get them out into the world. And that process has never really stopped on most of those pieces. I'm talking about pieces in some cases that are over 10 years old. I have pieces that I was working on, like that I started writing in 2015 when I was fresh out of undergrad. I finished my schooling in 2014 for undergrad, and I undertook writing a lot of piano pieces at that time, shortly out of school. And I still go back and revise those pieces now because I never did anything with them as far as getting them into the world. So I think, well, I just need to polish them up a little bit more and then they'll be ready. But it's like they're 10-year-old pieces now, and they're like short pieces too. They're like 3 minutes, 3-page pieces. Like, how much can you really revise a piece like that? So anyways, this is the first time in a while that I said, to hell with all that. I'm writing new pieces, brand new, from scratch. No trying to recycle old material or anything like that. I'm writing a new piece, blank slate. And I guess as part of getting out of the rut of starting new pieces, I thought I need to get out of the rut in other ways too. Like, I need to get out of the rut of not showing these pieces to the world that I write. So I thought maybe live streaming would be a way of like breaking that mold a little bit, right? Because the rut that I've been in is not just about the writing process itself, It's not just that I wasn't writing enough new pieces. Like, I can still write a lot of new pieces, but I'm still stuck in a rut. Even if I'm writing new pieces, if I'm not getting those pieces out into the world, that's part of the rut that I'm in, So I thought, maybe if I start live streaming my compositional process and like playing the piece for the world before it's really truly ready and sort of intruding onto my own private process, the eyes of the world, as it were, by like putting this on the internet for anyone to see, I'm thinking maybe that's like helping me to break my mindset about keeping these pieces hidden and thinking they have to be perfect, and they're never really perfect, so they're never going to see the light of day. Maybe this is a way. It's a little violent and disruptive because I do believe in that the compositional process should be pretty private, or extremely private, or maybe like the most private thing, right? But I'm like, maybe I'm kind of like pushing myself out of that comfort zone a little bit. As much as I believe those things about, composing being like fundamentally a private act, and I'll probably, I don't know, get back to that or something, or I don't know. But the point is that I'm getting myself to get the music out there, like no matter what it takes, right? It's a little drastic to be live streaming my compositional process in a sense, Maybe I'm going a little too far in the other direction, but at least it's getting the piece out there in a way, you know? So, anyways, you know, there's still the part about getting the piece out there, you know, as far as like actually sending it to performers and sending it to publishers and stuff like that. Like, that's going to be another can of worms. And live streaming doesn't really have anything to do with that. But we're going to just take one thing at a time. I'm just going to cross each bridge as I come to it. So right now, I truly am still in a place where I do have to finish this piece. We're closer than we've ever been. The ending, okay, so I was working on the ending. Actually, this is where I need to jump in. I see some things that I want to fix in the ending. These chimes should not be that octave. This should be a lower octave. Oh, I see it. I see it. This is all going to be one arpeggio. Da 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 da. Cool. And see, now that turns into the chime. Pretty clever. Nice. I like the way that works now. See. Hold on. I'm not sure anymore. Sooner too. I kind of want to end the arpeggio earlier. I have to end here so that the last statement of the melody is really, really distinct, truly distinct. Oh, that was weird. See, so here's another Dorico thing. It is not going to let me tie this note to this note without changing the scale, because it now considers them one object. It's another one of those stupid things. So it's kind of like pick the lesser of two evils, you know? Like, okay, I'll have this note not be scaled properly, but then no, look, it's makes the beam on this one. Like, there's no way to get this. Dorico does not believe that I can have a Q size note tied to a normal size note. It's just, that's not a thing that the program will let you do. It just doesn't believe in it. So, or it's not that the program doesn't believe in it. Maybe the designers don't believe in it, but the program does not have that functionality built into it. So if I tie this one, it's going to make, that looks really weird. That's not right. I could make, okay, so I guess the way around it is I could make this one Q size as well. That's probably the best solution. Also looks a little funny to me, but oh well, it's fine. It's whatever. It makes sense at the end of the day. Why does this tie look wrong though? But why the ties here on two different levels? That's really weird. But, yeah, why is it tying like that? Is that because of the Q size? If I make it the regular size, does it still do that? Yeah. Is that really how that tie would? That tie looks really wrong to me. That it's on two different. Oh, whatever. That is so weird looking. I really feel like the anchor of the tie should be on the same level both times, right? Like, if I adjust it, oops, yeah. Does that look more right? Maybe it would need to be flattened a little bit, but no, that doesn't help it. That does not help it. Let's just let it do it the way it wants to do it. All right, where was I? Oh, the arpeggio at the end. Okay, so I don't want these like chimes. I don't think I want them at all, actually. I think I need the space. I'm just going to try them an octave lower, but otherwise I think I might get rid of these entirely. These chords. It's a nice idea, but it's like kind of cramming too many ideas in here at once. Where was I? Let's start on the low C. Yeah, no, I think I'm actually just going to save these to the end. It's a lot more, sometimes less is more, right? And like, as much as I like the idea of having this little chime chord that comes out of nowhere, oh, that would be so cool if I could pull it off. But like, no, I think I need the space here. I think you really need to just have these chords resonate. In fact, it's so important that there be resonance through these bars that I think I'm actually going to make the pedaling totally explicit. So I'm actually going to have the pedal line go the whole time here. Because, wait, why did I pull up that menu? Because I really do want to have the resonance be like I want it to be super, super clear how long these chords should be held and that there's no breaking the pedal in this bar. So all of these are going to be retakes on these downbeats. This would probably be intuitive to almost any player, but sometimes you really want to see it visually on the page. Like I want to see that pedal line. It actually helps a lot. And then same thing going to the end. Like it's very likely that a player would actually break the pedal here, which would break the whole effect. It's so, so important that the pedal be held from this low B all the way to the end, including the C natural and C natural and D natural thing, and to not break the pedal there. So I'm going to show that. Do I want it to start all the way back here? Oh, why did it do that? Do I want it to start all the way back here? Perhaps. Oh, we're going to get fancy with it. We're going to actually have the starting symbol be a retake symbol. I really like to do that. Dorico doesn't like to do it. It's one of those ways where Dorico thinks I'm cheating or something, but have the retake, then you have to do a workaround here. So sign appearance. This is how you trick it. Pedal text, nothing. And then look at that. There might be another way to trick it too. If you do sign appearance hook, and then line start hook, no hook. That's actually, yeah, that's probably the way you're supposed to do it. Because now I'm telling it no hook. Why they couldn't just have the sign appearance be, well, I guess they have to have some sign. I wish there was just an option in this menu that's just nothing. Or even better, if the sign appearance was the retake sign. But I guess they don't believe in that. You know, it feels like you have to kind of trick it because it really doesn't want you to be able to just drop a retake. Like, it's really confusing to me that the retake, if you click on it, look, nothing happens. So I really want it to be that, like, I could click on it and just drop it in anywhere, but it doesn't let you do that. See what I mean? Like, it actually did bring it over to my cursor, but if I just click somewhere where there's not already a pedal line, it's just gonna not do anything. It's just gonna select that thing. And that's the same thing, like if I click on the note and do a retake, nothing's gonna happen. So you actually need for there to be a pedal line. It took me a while to figure this out, and they don't code their buttons to indicate the difference between a button that can be placed like independently and a button that needs something else there in order to be placed, because these two buttons look exactly the same. They're symbols, right? But if I press this button, it does something. If I press this button on a note, it doesn't do anything. So you have to figure out that, wait, okay, so this button needs to have this thing already occurring in that passage in order for it to work. But even then, it doesn't always work. Like right now, see, it's not working. And then same thing here, it's not working. I should put something on my notepad. Rambling about Dorico. We're at the rambling about Dorico stage. So you need to actually realize that the pedal line is the only, like the actual line is the only place where you can put the retake. Now I can put it in, whereas I couldn't put it in before. And I certainly can't put it in, like say if this line extends to the B. I can't put in the retake there because it doesn't consider that a valid end to a pedal sign, right? So anyways, that kind of stuff with Dorico is always like super, super confusing to me. maybe someone else is like way smarter than me. They're like, no, it makes perfect sense, but I don't know, does not really make sense to me. Okay, get off your high horse, Kenneth. Stop rambling about Dorico. No, I did it. Oh God, I want this line to be shorter at the beginning, but now see, it doesn't give me anything. Son of a gun. It's really annoying because now that line is going to appear as a little, like, weird little line in the previous system, and there's no way to get rid of it. I just want the retake symbol. Ugh. Don't tell me that that's not a valid notation. I know that's a valid notation. I've seen it plenty of times in printed music. The tradition is the practice, okay? I don't care what it says in some book. It's not in the Gould. It's not in the whatever. It's like, you know what's the real book about how notation works is sheet music. Sheet music itself, like it's the practice, it's the accepted practice. And like, yes, I know that publishers have house styles and house manuals and stuff like that, right? But they actually differ in significant ways. One publisher does things one way, another publisher does things another way. So if you agree with one publisher's way of doing things, then oftentimes that puts you in disagreement with another publisher who probably has equal authority, right? I mean, what publisher are you going to point to as like, no, this publisher does things objectively correctly all the time, and every other publisher that disagrees with them is wrong? Like, you could say that, like, well, like Henley is a good example of how like correct like notation should look, right? And it's probably true. Like Henley is probably as close to a gold standard as you can get, but Henley does not publish, as far as I know, does not publish Penderecki or Stockhausen or Ligeti. I don't think, maybe they might publish Ligeti now. I don't know. Or actually, I think they might publish Takemitsu too. I was going to say Takemitsu as another example of a composer with unconventional notational practices. Or to be more extreme, like George Crumb, right? As far as I know, Henley has not released a Urtext edition of a George Crumb score. And if you're familiar with these composers that I'm talking about, you know what I'm saying. It's that, you know, there are notational practices that lie outside of Henley's particular scope of the composers that they publish. So you cannot turn to Henley as a definitive, you know, resource for how to publish those particular composers' music. Then you would have to look at the publishers that do publish them, like Schott or whoever, right? So in any case, your like benchmark for what is correct notational practice is going to depend on some combination of publishers and printed guidebooks or resources such as the Elaine Gould, which is as close to a definitive book as we can probably ever hope for. But there are other books that go places where Gould doesn't, right? There are books about contemporary music notation that go further into detail than Gould does. Do I have them here? Yeah, like I have the Gardner Reed music notation, but like the Stone music notation in the 20th century, like this covers a lot of stuff that is not covered in Elaine Gould's book, right? Because it goes into places that Gould in her survey is maybe not quite as interested in. So, for example, I don't think that Gould has a section on graphic notation. I don't think. So the Kurt Stone music notation in the 20th century has examples of graphic notation. Now, it's not an exhaustive guide on how to do graphic notation. Basically, the Kurt Stone says, hey, graphic notation is a thing, and if you want to try to do it, here's some examples of what people have done, and like, good luck, have fun, go try it. That's kind of their guidance on graphic notation, basically. I have another notation manual. I don't see it up there. I don't know where it went. But I have another notation book that proposes to exhaustively cover all of the extended technique and new notational practices of recent times. I forget what it's called, and I don't know where it is right now. It's somewhere around here. But I might see it in my piles of books. No, I don't see it. Darn it. But it's a book about like really out there like notational procedures, like, and the most out there stuff and how to like somewhat systematically document it. And this book basically says there's no way to ever document all of this stuff because composers are always going to be coming up with new symbols and new ways of doing things. That's what composers do. You know, composers shouldn't feel limited by the existing systems or by the existing symbols or whatever. Like if you really need to come up with new notational procedures because there's not a good way to represent your thinking with the existing symbols or procedures, then invent your new system and like use it and be consistent about it and advocate for it or whatever. That's what you should do as a composer if you are that kind of composer. I tend to be much more conservative in my approach, so I tend to be pretty well served by the existing sort of tradition, as it were, of notation. However, I do find myself at odds with like this program Dorico a lot because Dorico seems to have particularly strong preferences about how things ought to be done. And if you disagree with those preferences or want to do things differently, the program really, really does not want you to, well, do that. So, anyways, I believe that the retake pedal, here's the end of my soapbox, okay? I believe that this retake pedal is a valid symbol in and of itself. And I do not think that there's a way to put it in Dorico. There might be a way to add it as an independent symbol. I think Dorico has symbol support. I haven't tried to do it, but maybe I should because I use this symbol so much. That's a rabbit hole I don't really want to go down right now. But I'm pretty sure Dorico has a way of like, you can make all kinds of symbols and stuff. I said I wasn't going to go down this rabbit hole any further, but let's see, symbol, music symbols. I know there's a way to like create your own symbols in Dorico. I remember this being a feature that they were really proud of and that I saw in one of their videos at some point. Generate chord symbols, create, is there a way to create a symbol? Where's the symbol? Maybe, preferences. I'm pretty sure there's a way to like add your own symbols and you can draw them and everything. Is that a Dorico feature? Maybe it's another notation program that had that feature. Whatever. So for now, we're just going to stick with the sort of irritating workaround way of doing it. Actually, I'm going to have this retake go back a little bit. I want it to start more like around here. That's fine. That kind of solves the problem. Okay. Let's see how this section sounds now. I think this ending is... No, I'm going to curse it. Every time I say this ending is finally getting there, then I end up doing like another 5 revisions on it. So let's just play and see how it sounds. I already started getting carried away with trying other ideas. I need to play the ending exactly as written before I start doing that. So here it is. Yeah. I do think I want the sextuplet here the way I had it before. At least with the last one where it's tied over. I don't know. This conflict, this cross relationship between the D natural and the D sharp, it's kind of interesting. You know, it's like there's definitely quite a bit of tension harmonically with a D natural in the left hand and a D sharp in the right hand. But it's so dissipated at this point. Like the piece is so dissipated that it's not like I think you hear it as a tremendous dissonance. It's more just kind of like this, I don't know, atmospheric effect. But maybe I should do it as before, where the arpeggio just continues. I think I might go back to how I had it before. This is yet another thing that I'm probably going to go back and forth on for quite a while. I find myself, it's very easy to flip-flop, as they say, to flip-flop on an issue of a piece. So do I want it this way? Do I want it that other way? And sometimes you find yourself just like really going back and forth. I don't know how else to put it. You're like, oh, I kind of like it. I kind of like it version A one day and then version B another day, you know, or I like version A in the morning and I like version B in the afternoon or whatever. Sometimes it can be really hard to settle on a final version, because if you have multiple versions that are sort of equally strong, or that's how it feels at least, then like how do you pick a version, you know? I had a teacher who I reference all the time. He had the phrase "decide not to decide." Truthfully, I'm still not entirely sure what that means, but it sounds good. I'd like that. I would like that. If I could do that, if I could get myself to stop making all these decisions about the piece and just freaking, you know, write the piece, yeah, that'd probably be nice. But I feel like it's easier said than done. All right, the last thing. All right, I was gonna tweak this material a little bit more, but I'm starting to get a little bit of fatigue for the evening. I did want to look at this climax one more time before I call it a night, because based on the earlier discussion of the like proportion of a climax relative to the overall proportion of the piece, I do feel like this is maybe not going as far as it could. Like there could be a little bit more of the high energy stuff for another couple bars. So I want to put some bars in and see if I can. I think when I was playing it, I saw where it could happen, which is right here. This change in harmony is really distinct, and I feel like it actually could go quite a bit further. So like here, the piece is very E majory with this dominant pedal, a little bit chromatic, but not very. Still staying in the same field as before. Now here you get a big change, but then it goes right back. Maybe this change could go even further. How would it go further? There, F. I could actually sequence. When in doubt, sequence. Sequence is your best friend. Yeah, that sounds cool. Oh, I always forget Dorico is really weird about copying and pasting these triplets, because it doesn't. Oh my god. Okay, so I'm trying to copy and paste this material, and look, it looks wrong when I paste it because Dorico's hiding the triplets and it doesn't select them when you select the notes. So if I do unhide symbols right now, unhide, there's the triplets. They will select now that they're visible. But, watch this, if they're not visible, which they're not right now visually, they're there hiding in the background, the sextuplets. But if I copy this material, watch what happens. It did not actually select the sextuplets that had hidden. Now it does. Again, this is one of those things that I wonder, is this supposed to be like that? Like, is that a feature, not a bug? So usually when I'm working on a piece that has a lot of triplets or sextuplets that are getting hidden, I try to remember not to change that step until the very end. So tuplets, repeated tuplets, always show. Let's just have it always show the tuplets for now, so I don't have to worry about any of these stupid issues with the copy paste. All right, so back to my sequence. Sequence time. Sequence it down. Hell yeah. Heck yeah. That could sound good, maybe. Wait. No, wait, hold on. Oh, I wanted it down a half step, not a whole step. And the bass line has to stay the same. That's part of the fun of it. It's a pedal, so it doesn't participate in the sequence. Oh, this spell is all janked up. There we go. That could work, possibly. It's getting kind of funky. Ooh, yeah, that's something. That's something. It's very clearly a sequence, and I have to dress up the sequence a little bit so it's not as like hitting you over the head with the sequence. But the chords. Do sound quite nice. What am I changing it? Maybe I could accelerate the harmonic rhythm once it starts to sequence. That would be, now we're, maybe. Maybe I should accelerate the harmonic rhythm in the middle of the sequence. That's when you start getting like, it starts getting a little scary, but in a good way. I mean, scary in the sense that like now you're out of your comfort zone. So I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna do insert mode, have note durations here. Ooh, this might, no, I don't know if this will work. We're gonna try it. And then go straight, like literally cut out the second group, because it does actually kind of work to go almost, not quite. That chord in the left hand's really awkward. It actually works better not to roll it. Because they need to use the thumb on both of these notes. So that's, no, see, I want it next to the note. Put it next to the note. Fingering, next to note. Where do I do that? Position left of note head. Good enough. I really want the bracket. I want the bracket. There should be a bracket. When the thumb plays the same note, the correct way to do it is with a little bracket. And of course it doesn't have that option here. Like, come on, Dorico. Like, that's a very common notation to have a bracket for when the thumb plays two notes at the same time. I'm amazed. Okay, wait. Maybe I'm not looking in the right place. I would think it would be under fingering because it is a fingering thing, but maybe I have to go into my vertical lines. Oh, that's how I'm going to do it. Okay, fine. It's another workaround. Come on, give me the bracket. I just clicked on it. Why is it? Oh no, it bracketed the whole chord? No, why can't you just bracket part of the chord? What? Come on, I had two notes selected. Give me a bracket over two notes. Why won't it do that? What? Does it really have to bracket the whole chord every time? Do I have any way of adjusting the height of this bracket? There's no way. Okay, so I have to do it in engrave mode, I guess. Oh, what a clunky workaround. And now it's getting all slow. See, okay, so as far as I know, this is the only way to make a fingering bracket in Dorico. Doesn't that seem a little off? Does that seem off to anyone else? This is a very common notational practice. You see it, goodness gracious, you see it in pedagogical works all the time. Like the Faber Piano Ventures and stuff talk about this as like a notational practice that kids should be aware of. Come on, if they're teaching it in the books, then don't you think like maybe the notation program should be able to do it? Is that naive? Is that a naive thought? It makes sense, right? Kids learn this in Faber Piano Adventures level like 2, and then the notation program doesn't have support for it without a workaround. I don't know. That seems fishy to me. Anyways, all right. Where was I? Let's get rid of this wavy line too. Does this sequence work? Oh, well, the other thing is we're going to keep sequencing it. Now that we've halved the harmonic rhythm, part of the fun of that, part of the point of it, is it lets us sequence a little bit longer. Hell yeah, that's going to sound so good. Oh, yes. This one doesn't actually need the bracket anymore. I think this is going to sound good. Maybe. Let's see. Before, down by a half step. Yeah. Alright, hold on. I know I did just exclaim no when I played it the first time, but let's hear it again. Oh, I see why I'm confused, because is that a... No. No. I thought I had the accidentals wrong for a second. I don't want this to continue the sequence in the same way. It doesn't quite sound right to me. I feel like I want it to go to a different place. Something about this is bothering me. Sequencing. Maybe I should change the pattern. How big do I want this to get? That's still the question. I might not figure it out tonight because I'm starting to tap out energy-wise, but I'm starting to see how this climax could be significantly expanded as far as like going further and getting bigger and doing more stuff. And I think I could even have my cake and eat it, in the sense that I could have this big crazy climax that still gets back to this this chord and this way of leading out without a lot of trouble. I think I can land on this low B. Like, I could do a whole bunch of crazy stuff and then still land on this low B and have exactly the same retransition and everything else. So I'm probably going to spend my next composition session probably offline, because it's going to be a lot of experimentation, and I don't know if I want to broadcast, live stream. I don't know if I want to live stream this next level of exploration that I'm going to go into, because it's, first of all, it's very unproductive to think that stuff out loud. I just have to be doing it for a while. And I was listening to my live stream from last night where I was doing that on a section, and I was like, oh, I don't know why anyone would ever watch this, aside from me, I guess, because it's literally me playing the same, like, little snippet, a couple of snippets over and over and over and over and over, just looking for slight variations, which is what composing is a lot of the time, by the way. Like, I've recorded my composition sessions before, not on video, but for a long time I've actually recorded composition sessions on using an audio device, like a field microphone, or if I have access to a DAW, I'll record the MIDI into the DAW and then listen to it later. And I've done that many, many times over the years. For a while, it was like my practice to do that. Like, anytime I would compose, I would record it in some way so I could listen later and see if there was anything in an improvisation that slipped out that I didn't catch, or if there was an idea that I was having trouble notating. Like I can listen to it later and see if it becomes clearer. Like, oh yeah, no, I know how to write that down now. But the thing that I'm always struck by when I listen to those recordings of myself playing is just how much I repeat material, like how many times. Like it's many times. Sometimes I'll have a recording where I'm playing literally the same little fragment of just a few notes or a few chords for like an hour or more. And suddenly I feel for the people that I've lived with, my neighbors or housemates, what it must be like to have to. I'm in a very good place now where that's not a consideration. That's not a concern. Excuse me. So I feel very blessed for that. Um, I guess since I'm probably about to go offline and do just compose on my own or whatever, without live streaming it, I'll finish with this. I'll tell this little story. I've lived with other musicians, and when musicians live together, it can be pretty funny, because there are a lot of things that we do as musicians that we're probably oblivious to. Um, like I just mentioned about composing, where you're playing the same thing over and over and over and over. But to you, it doesn't feel tedious or repetitive because you're in your flow state. Like you're thinking the music through. You're thinking it through at the keyboard, tactilely and audibly, and so it doesn't sound irritating or whatever to your ears, right? Because you're the one. You're living in the music and you're just working it out. But to another person, they're just hearing the same freaking whatever thing over and over, and it's driving them crazy. Um, but I've experienced that on the other side too. Like the kind of funny thing I was going to tell is I lived with a pianist, good friend, colleague, and we lived in a house together for a while, and had a piano there. And it was interesting because his way of practicing is seems unique to me from what I have heard of other musicians practicing, where he believes very much in mental practice and silent practice and practice away from the keyboard. I mean, he's pretty dedicated with that kind of stuff, and that takes real discipline and real dedication, because many musicians, myself included, we want our practice to be audible and tactile, and we want to be like we want to be practicing by playing the music, and basically you're getting work done as long as you're playing notes, making sound, and you're not really getting any work done by just studying the score, right? Or memorizing, away from your instrument. Like whoever heard of such a thing? Um, but there are very, very smart musicians, much smarter than me, who strongly advocate that practicing should be mostly mental, and the physical aspect of it is like, yes, it's important, and yes, you have to spend many hours training your technique and all this other stuff, but really the bulk of your work on a piece should be like in the score and in your mind and all these other things. It's hard to do. So all this is to say that when we lived together, when I lived with this pianist colleague of mine, when he would be practicing, um, you wouldn't hear anything for a long time. It was like almost kind of the Zen monk kind of thing, where he would be at the piano, I would be like, upstairs, like in my room or whatever, and he'd be at the piano, like I'd go upstairs and he'd be, there at the piano in the living room. And I'd go upstairs for, whatever, maybe half an hour would go by. And then all of a sudden I'd hear just a few measures of this sonata that he's working on. And, played very well, played, at full tempo, very confidently. And then that's it. And then another 20 or 30 minutes might go by. And then I'd hear the same four measures again. Like that's his practice technique. And it was kind of a trip for me to realize that all of those periods of silence that was silence, to me, was almost certainly a period of intense concentration and audiation for my colleague who was immersed in this piece that he was working on, and that it only became audible in brief moments. And that's how he practiced, and maybe still practices, as far as I know. So, anyways, I'm about to go into my intense focus mode to work on this climactic material, and I'll check in again next time, perhaps with the really finished version of the piece. So that's how I'm going to end the live stream for tonight. Thanks to anyone who made it through. If you made it through this whole thing, as I've said before, you surely deserve some kind of prize. I see Dorico, and my mind instantly read it as Dorito. I didn't realize until just now that Dorico and Dorito are only one letter different. So now whenever I see Dorico, I'm going to think about Doritos, because I love Doritos. Nacho cheese Doritos are my jam. Oh my gosh, nacho cheese Doritos are so good. This is my Achilles heel with junk food. I can resist the temptation of many things when it comes to junk food specifically. Very few things make me go, ooh, I really crave that. But for some reason, I don't know why, it is specifically nacho cheese Doritos. But boy, oh boy, do I have a soft spot for these nasty little things. And this bag here, you see, this is what I think of as the normal size bag, not the little bag. Well, it's hard to tell the scale. Nacho cheese Doritos bags. You know what I'm talking about. There's the like personal size bag, and then there's the like bag that's supposed to be family size. But to me, that family size bag, that is the personal size bag. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm gonna eat that whole bag. Like I don't need. Wait, is that? See, I can't tell the scale. I'm trying to find. You know what I'm talking about. You know, you got the bags. Okay, I'll have to show with my hands. You know, you got the bags that are about yay big that you get at the sandwich shop or whatever. And then you get the bags that you get in the grocery store that are about 2 or 3 times as big. Yeah, that's the bag that I grab when I'm in snacking mode. So that's probably a good place to sign off. Rambling about Dorico, rambling about Doritos, rambling about Doritos. Maybe I should just start calling Dorico Dorito. Dorico 5, Dorito 5. I don't know. I'm getting silly. All right. Good night, YouTube. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.